She left such a hard year. Bloom well deserves it.
Right. This is 12 Days of Fountain Pens, and we are back with another night of wonderful, wonderful talks. Tonight we're going to have Apurva Robertson talking about Flex Nibs. Yay! We all love Flex Nibs. Come on, we know everyone loves them. We have also sponsors, and they sent us some lovely stuff. Robert Oster sent this wonderful, wonderful ink that is available for a giveaway tonight. So if you want to win this ink, please send me an email to 12 days of fountain pens at bemet.io. You guys know the email address has been over there in the chat every day. I'm going to post it again tonight, of course. But if you already won the ink, I'm not going to give you another bottle. Ha ha. We also have the great, the wonderful Den's pens. Dennis donated this wonderful, wonderful Vanagon pen for the quiz that's going to happen this Sunday, and it's one of the top prizes. We also have the sponsorship of Gramia Pens that donated, amongst other pens, this Lalex sterling silver pen. It's a sterling silver pen made by the same people that make Montegrappa pens. What else? We have more sponsors. We have Dragon Meat that provided us with this wonderful Zoom account that is allowing us to have this wonderful chat. We also have iZods as a sponsor, which is gonna donate us a beautiful, beautiful pen. And without further delays, let's start with Apurva and wonderful, wonderful talk about Flex Nibs. Let's go.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Cool.
Yes.
So, as you know, I'm going to talk to you about Flex Nibs. I've got too many, but it's something
Never too
that
many.
That's true. I wouldn't say my collection is complete, but it'll get there. But something about it about 6 months ago that I really enjoyed the writing experience with the Flex Nib. I have a very light pressure when I write, which I took advantage of because when you write with Flex Nibs, if the nib is soft enough, then you don't have to actually put that much pressure. But if you have light hand, then your upstrokes are actually very thin. So I can actually write normally with a Flex Nib, and I can use Flex Nibs daily. So I started taking advantage of that and started kind of looking into a bit more options and just started enjoying the experience. The other reason I liked it is because I love writing. So I think writing is more my hobby than actually collecting pens and collecting inks. And when I'm writing, Flex Nibs kind of made that writing experience intentional for me because I had to slow down, because I had to look after the pen, because I had to look after the nib. It just kind of made it more fun for me. And when I was journaling, when I was writing, it just made it more interesting. The other thing is when I was looking into it, you had so many different options to look at, so many different starter pens, so many different expensive pens. I was very overwhelmed, but I like researching stuff. I like reading stuff. I like researching stuff. So because of the amount of options that are out there, I started reading and I got more and more intrigued. And I said to a few more people, I'm still new to it. I've only been collecting pens, I would say, for a year. But I've been using fountain pens for about 3 or 4 years now, but exclusively only for a year. And most of that year has been spent reading and reusing Flex Nibs. So I started off with, the Noodlers, which I wouldn't recommend, but it's there. You start off with that. Then there was the Conklin, the Omniflex. Again, another one I wouldn't really recommend, but I started off with that. And then I started exploring a bit more, and I moved on to finding an FPR. So this was my start to the rabbit hole. And I just loved it for the amount of flex that I got out of a steel nib. So I've used this pen a lot. It's changed with my writing style. I never thought a steel nib would change with my writing style, but because I did those Christmas cards and because I used this was the first Flex Nib pen I had, proper one, I would say, that I ended up kind of breaking in the tines with how I write. I don't know that if that's a real thing. I don't know if you can actually break in the tines like that, but I ended up doing that. So I've actually got another FPR that I ended up doing a group order with a couple of my friends, and this is a newer one. So this hasn't been used very much. So I'll show you the difference a little bit later. So my plan, so that was a little bit of an introduction. My plan for today is to talk about kind of common topics. And then after that, I'll do some writing. So I've got a camera set up. I'll switch my camera and I'll write with some of my pens. So hopefully that will show you kind of the different flex and amount of flex you can get from various pens. So the next topic I wanted to talk about is about the inks in the paper. So we briefly were talking about inks before we started. I said that Flex Nibs actually throw a lot of ink on the paper. So you actually do need good paper for it to work, or not work is the wrong way of saying it, but for it to actually highlight the inks that you're using and actually not feather on the piece of paper that you're using. So there are loads of different papers out there that you can try. So there's Dorodia, there's Clairefontaine, etc. There's also slightly cheaper paper that you can try. I know that Noah swears on Oxford optic paper, I think. He likes that and he uses that. So he's showing it off. So that's good as well if you want a cheaper alternative. And he uses Flex Nibs too. So, if he uses it, I'm sure he likes it for some reason. But I actually use Tomoe River is really good, obviously expensive. Then there's the William Hanna, which is another paper I use. William Hanna paper is thicker. I like it as my daily paper. Tomoe River paper I use for kind of writing, or if I'm using a fun ink, like a shading ink or a sheening ink or a shimmer ink, it just highlights on Tomoe River paper. And the reason it highlights it, because the ink sits on the paper, on Tomoe River paper, it doesn't absorb it. The more absorbent the paper is, the more it is likely to feather due to the amount of ink that goes on it. So I'm going to do my little writing demonstration later with Tomoe River paper, and I can show you the William Hanna paper if you guys are interested a little bit later as well. So that's a little bit about paper and ink. So with ink, in my pens that I can fully disassemble, I do use shimmer inks because they're fun and you can get that flex and line variation. I actually only recently got into shimmer inks. I was kind of not afraid of it, but I couldn't be bothered spending that much time cleaning my pens. But recently I bought some pens and they were in a really bad state when I received them. So they really had to be cleaned, and I think it was just my bad luck. I spoke to the seller, everything was fine. It was an honest mistake. I don't really blame the person, but I had to spend a long time cleaning those pens and to get them to a good standard. So I thought after that, okay, shimmer inks can't be as bad as what I'm doing here. It took me a very long time to clean those gunky ink on those pens. So ended up using shimmer inks and bought lots of shimmer inks. So that's how the shimmer ink rabbit hole started for me. But anyway, as I was saying, so I don't put a shimmer ink in piston fillers just because they're harder to clean out. There is no harm if you follow good pen hygiene. You can put shimmer inks in almost anything, but you can't let shimmer inks sit there. I would definitely not recommend it in vintage pens because they're just very, very hard to clean and you can't soak them and you can't do much with them. So stay away from shimmer inks and vintage pens unless you're feeling brave enough and you know how to clean them and disassemble them. But mainly sheening inks and shading inks are amazing in Flex Nibs. So I'm going to show off some of my favorite inks a little bit later in my pens. So then it kind of leads us nicely on to vintage and modern Flex pens. Again, something I researched. I don't claim to be an expert on vintage pens, but I'll tell you a little bit about what I've learned from it. So people always ask, is vintage Flex better than modern Flex? I think the answer is yes. And a reason that happens is because there was, I think, lots of better quality control basically back in the day on the nibs, on the pens. And there was a human element involved in almost every pen that went out. So even up until the 60s, I would say that pens weren't mass manufactured that much. So every pen that you got was probably hand tuned, was probably ground by some nibmeister, and when it got to your hands, it was perfectly working. Nowadays, even Flex Nibs are, or attempt at modern Flex Nibs are mass produced. So it's harder to find a really good pen straight out of the box. But modern Flex, I think, is still very good. And for me, I like them both equally because I think from my experience, I've got the good modern Flex pens. And I think the best experience with a modern Flex nib, I would say, is actually to get a nib from nibmeisters, to get a nib that's tuned, ground in a screw-in unit, probably a Bock or a Yovo with an ebonite feed. And that's a glorious experience. I've actually got one from Noah I'm going to show you guys later today, which is his Flex nib that he's put on his Leonardo, which has an ebonite feed as well. So that is something I'll show you. And I actually think that writes much better than some of the Flex nib pens that you get out of the box, because it's been tuned, because it's been looked after, and I got it in a way that it was ready to write. I am borrowing it. I should probably give it back to him at some point, but he'll find out. Then that's my little bit
Keep
on. What's Noah's point of view on that?
He just laughed. He can't do anything, but well, he knows your address, but keep it.
So, yeah, so I'll talk about a little bit about feeds then, because I mentioned about ebonite feeds. Another thing about vintage pens, and the reason that they don't railroad it much or they write much better, is because they are, majority of them have come with an ebonite feed. Nowadays, nibs are plastic. They are mass produced again. They needed really good clean before you even use them, which seems crazy that you buy a pen, you want to be able to write with it, but you actually have to clean pens before you actually write with them, which is strange. But I do it. I've got into the habit of doing it. So ebonite feeds make a huge difference to the writing experience. Again, I've got a couple that I can show you a little bit later, that one that has an ebonite feed and one that doesn't. Then another thing that you can do with Flex Nib to improve ink flow or reduce railroading is you can eyedropper the pen. So going back to the two FPRs, they come with a cartridge. They come with a cartridge converter. I've put one with a cartridge converter and I've eyedropped my own one. So you can see the difference in the amount of ink that you get when you eyedrop the pen. That's just something you can do. A little bit of silicone grease in a resin pen or an acrylic pen, you can do it. Not in a metal pen, but you can do it in an acrylic pen or a resin pen. So yeah, that's a little bit about that. Then writing really fast. So I mentioned earlier on in my little introduction that Flex Nibs make you slow down. You can, of course, you can write fast with a Flex Nib, but you're likely to get more railroading. Again, if you have a well-tuned pen or even a vintage pen, you can write quite fast with it and get away with it. But I think the fun part about writing with a Flex Nib is to practice your handwriting and you practice your cursive. So that's what I really enjoy about it. I think another reason why I would probably say start off with modern Flex pens is that they are easier to maintain and easier to clean. So you can, with modern pens in general, you can soak them, you can disassemble them, you can remove the cartridge, you can eyedropper them, you can basically do a lot with them to get them clean. Whereas with vintage pens, they are harder to maintain, harder to troubleshoot as well, I would say, because unless you know exactly what that pen is and how to disassemble it, it's harder to actually be able to look after it and troubleshoot it when it happens.
Well, and the modern pens, you can also replace anything you break easier as well.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. You can replace the nib. You can, yeah, it's just parts are easily available. I think that's what Bernardo was saying, that you can, with a vintage pen, you sometimes have to deal with the sack. So actually, I only have one vintage Flex pen with the sack. I actually prefer the piston fillers. That's also another one that I've realized about my own collection. that I prefer piston filling pens in vintage pens. They obviously are a little bit more expensive than the ones with the sack, but easier to maintain again. So that's my 2 cents on that. So I'll show you my vintage pen at the end. I don't have a huge amount, but I'll show you them. Okay. Oh, one more thing about vintage Flex is that the bounce back when you write with the pen, somehow, I don't know how, but you can actually feel more when you're writing with the vintage Flex pen. The bounce back and the push on the nib, you can actually understand more. So after I'm done, actually, I'm going to put some of mine on pen sharing, on John's pen sharing. I've been meaning to do it for a while, but I didn't get around to it. So I'm going to put some of my pens there so you can try some of mine and see what you think. But I would recommend trying the vintage experience, but buying a modern pen. And then when you get more confident, you can buy a vintage pen. I'm happy to give you advice on vintage pens that I've learned. I'm no expert, but I have done my research and I know generally where to look and what to do. So if you are looking to buy a Flex Nib vintage pen, feel free to message me later and we can talk about it. The last thing I wanted to talk about before I switch to writing is generally misleading marketing and misleading nibs out there. So this is a strange one, but there's a really good example. So going back to the Conklin, they've got an Omni Flex nib. I wouldn't actually say that's a Flex nib. It has a word flex in it, but it's not a Flex nib. So be mindful of that, especially with gold nibs that say Flex. So they're not always Flex, they're soft, and you can actually spring the tines. I've done it, and I've learned from my mistake, and they are easy to fix. So this is where going back to soft nibs, thanks Bernardo. This is going back to like the modern versus vintage. So modern nibs, if you spring the tines, they can be fixed. So you can go to someone like Noah or Jose or someone who can fix it for you. But with vintage pens, again, that becomes a little bit more difficult. You don't know exactly what the alloy is in the nib, etc., etc. So yeah, that's one thing I would say. I've got two that I would say are soft nibs. Obviously, like if I don't have a Flex nib in my collection, I have those kind of elastic and OmniFlex nibs because I still like the bouncy, springy writing, but they don't flex. Then there's the other pen that I have that's just worth mentioning is a Palladium nib, which I think is like a odd one. It's soft and it's very, very soft, but it's not a Flex nib. Again, just writing with it and gauging how it is, go slow. You write more, you gauge more. Just in general, you learn about it a bit more and how the nib writes. So I think that I've actually gotten quite lucky with the Palladium nib that I have and the titanium nib that I have, or they actually flex quite a lot. Actually, the tines spread more, but they're not flex. So yeah, just be careful of that. That's fine. Then the other thing, last thing I want to point out is around, maybe I'll just show you when I'm writing. Actually, I'll switch to writing, Bernardo. Just give me a minute. I've got another camera set up.
Sure, go on. If anything, we can switch.
No, I've got it set up, so I just need to, hopefully you should still hear me. That's the only thing. Can you guys see that?
Beautiful, yes, perfect.
Perfect. All right. Okay. I'll talk while I'm doing this, but I just need to move around a bit. 1 second. Okay, so the first one is let me know if you can't see it. Someone stop me or unmute yourself and tell me if, because
just put a little bit down.
Down? Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. Okay. Because I can't see the screen anymore. I'm looking at the paper, so you got to tell me unless okay, so the first one is, this is the FPR. That's a newer FPR. So you can see writing with it, you can get good line variation. The upstroke is very thin, but now I'll show you what I like about it is if I hold the pen very lightly, so I can write really small. And the ink is I won't write all the inks. I've actually made a little cheat sheet I can share on the group later of all the pens and inks I've shown.
Perfect.
So if you guys want to know what inks I've used, I'll tell you guys later. So yeah, that's the new one. And I'll show you the one that I use quite a bit. It's eyedroppered. This is the one I used for my Christmas cards. And you can see just the difference between the two. It's the same pen, same nib. One's eyedroppered, one's used a lot.
I knew it was that ink. I knew it.
It's one of my favorite shimmer inks. It writes so well, and it's very Christmassy.
Do you have Yamadori?
Yes, I
Taylor.
do.
It's the same ink.
Is it?
The only
Okay.
difference is the shimmer.
Okay, so next one. This is going to tease everyone, but I'm going to show it anyway. This is actually one from Noah. It's a hacked Noodlers pen. No new Noodlers out of the box will write like this, but I don't know what he's done, but he's made it work. And I'm tempted. I actually gave away my Noodlers. It wrote really well, but I didn't like it. It wrote fine, but it wasn't a Flex Nib. But this is Noah's. I'm tempted to actually...
Jose saying that it was him that modified that.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. No, I say no.
Unmute myself.
You are unmuted already.
Yeah. So this is Jose did the extra flexing.
Oh, okay.
And I corrected the tip and the feed.
Didn't know that. Sorry, Jose.
No worries. I just tried to. I made the cutouts and it was very soft, but I couldn't.
That was a partnership then.
Tinker with it, but I'm
Nice.
working on those.
It's in the messages.
Very nice.
I'll explain that. Make sure that was clear.
You probably did message me, Noah, but I've forgotten. So sorry about that. And the ink is actually Scribble Purple. Because we were talking about it yesterday, so I thought I'd add it to the mix. Okay. So this is another one I borrowed from Noah. This is his Flex grind. So this is another thing I wanted to mention. I don't know how much you guys can see, but it's actually got a keyhole breather hole.
It's out of focus.
Yeah, I'll switch cameras 1 second.
Push it a little further. Come on.
So this is the keyhole breather hole on it. So that makes a difference.
This one is steel or gold?
It's a steel.
Cool.
So as Noah is telling me to push it a little further, I shall. So with the steel nib, you can just have a go.
Apurva, can you just say again which nib that is?
It is Noah's grind. It's a box steel nib, and he's worked on it, added a breather hole, and I think cut the tines a bit more to make them pointier. But Noah, if you want to explain it better, go for it.
I sprinkled some magic. But yeah, exactly what you said. The tines were reshaped and the breather hole was added. That was mainly, and of course the writing point would need to be reground to add some drama to the effect, some dramatic effect.
Just to make sure, just someone thinking it's a sailor nib. It's not a sailor nib. It's just a sailor ink.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm writing the inks, you guys. I'm not writing the pens.
Yeah, that is Leonardo with nib made by Noah.
Yes. My cheat sheet will be a little bit better than this. I'll put it.
Make nibs, you know, at home. Press them sheet metal or something. I might do that at some point.
This is dense pen. This is a one I got from him. It fits a boxed number 6 nib. It's got a titanium nib on it, and the ink is golden yellow, which is one that Bernardo recommended to me, and I found it. And it's eyedrop birds, so you can see that it makes a
Perfect
huge
match for the
difference to
pen.
the. It is beautiful, and you can see the ink sloshing around, which is fun. So dense pen. So this is one of the nibs that I said isn't necessarily a flex nib. It's advertised as one, as advertised semi-flex, but again, I wouldn't push it too much. I shouldn't talk and write at the same time. I've set myself a challenge. But the other thing I wanted to say is that with the precious metals, you can get variations in the metal as well. So I've got 2 titanium nibs and 2 palladium nibs, but they actually work differently to each other. One flexes more, one flexes less. So it's worth trying out and seeing which one is going to write a bit better than the other. You're probably going to stumble upon one that doesn't write as well, but just keep trying until you find a good one. I'm sure there are a few shops out there. Phil has been great. He's been really good with my questions. I've been throwing questions at him a lot. So he might be able to test one for you before he sends it out. So sorry, Phil, I've just maybe thrown it in there for you, but this is a different one. This I can talk about a bit more. This is a crosshatch nib that I got from Pen Realm in America, and it's a recent addition to my collection, and I'm glad it arrived before the talk because I can show you guys. And it's in one of John Garnham's pen. It's one he made for me, and it takes a book number 6 nib. I'll show you guys a close-up picture of it, but look at that.
Wow.
I did too much there, but you can see this is what happens if I write too fast, but actually it can do that much flex. Let me try again. Start
Is that with the
slowly.
Nebonite feed as well?
Yes, it is, from the flexible nib housing.
Wow.
So start slowly. It will railroad. This is probably a good example. But if I start slowly, start again, it writes perfectly. I can keep going like this and it won't railroad now. But this is what happens with modern pens. I'm glad something did actually do this to show you, but it can do it. Hope that makes sense. Hope I haven't confused anyone. But the ink.
What pen is that? Because we need that pen.
The pen is John's pen, actually. So that's what I do with my pens. The pens are customs. I have a lot of custom pens that take number 6 nibs, either Bock, either Yovo, and I buy nibs basically to fit in these pens. And that's how I get my craving for Flex Nibs. I'll send you guys a link a little bit later. This is Pen Realm. It's in America. And the nib is Secretary of the Flex. So the ink is Diamond Soft Mint. And this is also with a cartridge, by the way. You can eyedropper convert John's pens if you wanted to, because they're acrylic or resin. But it's, there you go, Jose posted the link for us. It is an expensive nib, but it's actually not as bad as gold Flex nibs get. It's an investment, but this is what I do. This is how I kind of explore nibs. I have a pen already, so I just buy the nib. I don't have to buy the pen each time, which is quite cool. So yeah, this is Diamond Soft Mint, John's pen. It's the JG6 that he calls. So we're going on to gold nibs now, and this is another one that this is a much more expensive investment. It's one from FP Nibs. It's one of their semi-flex gold nibs. So it's very, 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 very soft. And the upstroke, you can barely see it, and that's on purpose. It's a needle point, and then it flexes. So it's probably a good point to highlight that the finer the point that you have, the line width or the flex that you're going to get is less, just because the amount of pressure you have to put on the nib. So this is an extra fine nib grind with the soft semi-flex option. So when you're writing, this is one I use for when I'm writing letters and stuff, because you don't want to use one of these crazy flex options for letters. This is a good one for letters because you can have that thin upstroke and then you flex with the downstroke. I can't remember what ink I put in here, but I can't remember. Sorry, guys. It's an orange of some sort, yellow orange. Okay, so now we're on to, I guess, the more expensive one. So this is a Scribo. This is a proper flex pen that comes with a piston filler. It's got the nib, it's got the weight, it's got the body, it's got everything that it would do for flex. Again, this is one I can use quite every day for flexing and writing. The ink is KWZ green gold. The ink lives in here, basically. I haven't switched it since I got the pen. It's green gold number 2. KWZ have really funny numbers. They have a green gold and they have a green gold number 2. And it's got a 14 karat gold extra fine nib. The next one is a penider with a quill nib. Can you guys still see? Yeah, okay, cool. The ink in here is actually one from our ink club. It's the last month's ink club box, and it's the Atsukiro. I don't know how to spell that, but I'm not gonna try. I can't even write when I can't even spell when I'm trying to write here, but someone can put it in the chat for me. Penider for the 14 karat.
Thomas Ang posted is ADZUKIIRO.
ADZUKIIRO.
From Kyo no Oto.
Yeah. It's a really, really cool shading ink. I really like it. It matches this pen perfectly.
I'm going to show off and say the Iro bit of all those inks actually is the Japanese word for ink, as far as I understand it. So Adzuki is the Adzuki bean, and then Iro is the ink. So it's Adzuki ink, essentially.
Nice. This is a really, really nice pen to write with. This is another one that I can, and I got it on clearance from Cult Pens, which was quite a great find. The next one is a Pilot Custom Heritage 912. So I've changed the feed on this one. This has got an ebonite feed from the flexible nib housing, and it writes really, really well now.
Flexible Nib Factory.
Yes, Flexible Nib Factory, that's right. And it's got a shimmer ink in there, and the ink is from this month's ink box. It's the Vinta Pelicantos. Again, I can't. Maybe someone can spell it out for me again, and then I can write it. But I love this pen. This is the one that, again, a recent addition to my collection, and the ebonite feed just makes me write, allows me to write really fast with it. Well, not really fast, but normal writing speed. So you can see it's no railroading, and I'm flexing.
It's Pilocintos, Piloncitos.
There you go.
Yay.
Cool. I have a few more to show. So I wanted to show you guys my 2 palladium nibs, and then I'll move on to my vintage pens. So I got one palladium nib from Phil at Beaufort, and I got Noah to grind it to an extra fine. So this one is the extra fine. Right, similarly to this one here, it railroads because the feed, I guess it might not have enough ink in there, but it writes perfectly fine when I'm writing slowly. And then I'll show you guys the difference between a standard one. So a standard extra fine palladium This is in a Visconti. This was my kind of grail pen for ages. And when they announced that they weren't doing the Palladium nibs, I jumped on it. I've been eyeing it, but I got the Florentine Hills. I wasn't planning on getting the Florentine Hills because it was way above my budget, but when they stopped doing the Palladium nibs, I thought, if I'm going to get one pen, I might as well get that. So that's actually KWZ Honey. So that's another ink that just lives in that. You'd think that because I love green inks, I would put a green ink in there, but I ended up going for a brown ink. So the two expensive pens have the inks that just live in there. So this one's got the other KWZ, and this one's got honey, KWZ Honey and KWZ Green Gold. Okay, so I'll switch the paper. And then last but not least, I have 4 vintage pens. So 2 are Pelicans.
Okay, bring the paper down, please.
Thank you. And I put sheening inks in there. So this is a vintage Pelican. So you can see what I mean. I can use them every day because when I'm writing, I can write normally. And I can write kind of fine, extra fine lines with most of them. And the ink is Krishna. Jungle. Volcano. I'll show you guys how they dry as well in a minute. The next one is another Pelican, which has got actually more flex than the one above. This one. I think it's diamond. I can't spell, you guys. I'm embarrassing myself here. There you go. Okay. So then this one I'm actually borrowing from Roy at iZods. This is an Osmia. It's a brand I'd never heard of. And I still can't find a huge amount of information on it, but he had it when we were talking about the kind of trying to find a Mont Blanc flex I would like. So obviously there's that calligraphy one, but I think that I've got pens here which will match that calligraphy flex. So actually I don't want the calligraphy flex pen. I actually would prefer to find an older 1950s one, the one that he mentioned in his talk. So he's going to help me find that next year, hopefully. So this is the Osmia. And I saved the 2 Troublemaker inks to last because, again, you guys were talking about them and my delivery of a few of them arrived today. So this is Osmia 883. The ink is Troublemaker. So I do like the pen. I think the upstroke is very, very fine, but actually it's not as much flex as I thought it would be. The Pelicans are better. So anyway, Roy wanted to know what I would think about it, so I'm borrowing it. I might keep it, haven't decided. But yeah, last but not least, I have a Waterman. And this is really good. I think this is a Waterman 52. I don't know the exact model off the top of my head, sorry. And the ink is
Watermans are famous for it.
Yeah. They are probably the most expensive to find a good quality one. I only have the one. I got it on eBay. It was a good deal. You really do have to hunt for the good vintage pens. Like you can't buy them the same way that you can buy modern Flex pens, because you can, and you have to ask enough questions, right questions to the seller, when it's been last serviced, what has been done to it, things like that. But I'll let that dry for a sec and I'll show you guys the first sheet. So you can see after it dries, the shimmer is crazy. And this is why I like Flex Nibs. You do have to be patient till it dries, but the shading, the sheening, the shimmer is fantastic. And we were talking about the troublemaker ones. You can see Milky Ocean as well. Can you guys see that? Cool. Okay, well, that brings me to the end of my chit chat.
Yay!
I'll swap to my.
There are already
face.
questions already.
I
I'll do
need to
the
have
draw.
a drink. Bear with me.
Yeah, sure. An order of questions already.
I can do questions. People would say I'm addicted to pens, but I would say in this crowd, I'm passionate about pens. So talk to me, pens.
Right. Lawrence, you can ask your questions.
Thank you, Apurva. That was really good. I've got a question.
Get closer to the mic, please. We can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Are you applying the same amount of pressure every time you write, or do you find some that you have to apply less pressure? So what?
I'm sorry, Lawrence, I can't hear you very well. I'm really sorry.
Type and I'll read it for you.
Yes, please.
Do you have to apply the same amount of pressure?
Depends on the nib. So it really, really depends on the nib and practice. So you need to start slow. Whenever you've got a new pen, really start slow. Be very intentional with what you're doing. And then slowly increase it. When you get to a point where it won't give you any more line variation, you're starting to take it too far and stop. I actually, I don't know if you guys remember, but I asked this question a few months back in the group. I said, how much flex is too much flex? Because I was still exploring. And you really just have to practice. And that's what everyone said to me. And I didn't believe it. So I asked the question, but you just have to practice. For the vintage pens, because they have a really good bounce back, as I mentioned, snapback, bounce back, I don't know what the right word is, but they will give you way more feedback when you're writing than the soft ones, the modern gold ones. So just practice. I write a lot. Like I said earlier, writing is more my hobby than pens and ink. So I just, practice. I can show you, I can talk to you about it. So if you've got flex pens that you're writing with, send me some of your writing pictures and I can work with you.
Apurva, I will DM you the winners, okay?
Okay.
The next question was by John Rabbit. John Fluffy, I mean Rabbit.
Hey Apurva, lovely talk. Thank you for that.
Thank
really,
you.
really helpful. Interestingly, because I was thinking about the ebonite feed versus the plastic feed thing, and actually I sort of just took apart one of my Osprey flex pens, and basically, I mean, the ink channel on that thing is like a gutter on your roof. You know, it's enormous, and I think that as much as anything is contributes to kind of the better ink flow, because everybody talks about ebonite being a better for ink flow, but actually the fact is you've just got an enormous channel letting the ink get down there, so that's really helpful. So I've always kind of wondered about like sort of grooving out a bit of like the feed on like some existing pens where I want a better flow and whatever, but anyway. And the other thing I was going to say was, of course, I've actually just got the new Omniflex from Conklin. So I don't know whether anybody else has got this. There is a marginal improvement, I think, over the old one in terms of softness, but I think it's lost a little bit of the line crispness. So if anybody's wondering about that. And then, of course, to say the other thing that I really like is the Osprey Zebra G nib unit, because I think the Zebra G nib just gives you that really, truly vintage feel. Because of those super duper long tines and whatever. And obviously, if you do break it, then you just go and buy another one, and it's like it's no big deal. Whereas you say if you've got one of these like super specialist flexible nib factory 18K nibs, you really don't want to kind of break that. But no, thanks. Thoroughly enjoyed the talk. Really lovely demo. Brilliant. Thank you.
So the one thing I would say is I've tried an Osprey pen, and I do think that it gives you really good line variation, and it's a great pen, but I actually find the nibs a little bit scratchy. Maybe that's because I'm spoiled with the gold nibs, but that was my personal experience. But it is definitely worth trying. I did try it. I actually don't have one in front of me.
The Zebra G or their steel flex nib?
The Zebra G.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah. It's super scratchy. I mean, it's like writing with a proper old-fashioned scratchy nib. But
that's
again,
that's
one of the that's one of the things that I sort of like about it. So anyway. Thank you.
So my dip pen has got a Zebra G nib, and I do use that for kind of doing my swatch cards if I want to just have a play with it, or if I want to try an ink and how it flexes or how it writes with flex writing. So I do use the Zebra G nib for that, and I would highly recommend it for trying out your inks and how they would look in a flex nib. A Zebra G nib is great for that.
Lovely. Thanks a lot.
It's got no tipping.
No tipping, Jose, please ask your question. Jose, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Apurva. Thank you for the talk. It was wonderful seeing those places, seeing you actually doing wonders with the flex. So the one thing I was wondering, it's how much do you feel a difference in the force you need to use in all those pens? Are ones that are particularly softer?
Definitely. So as I was saying earlier, the ones that are so steel nibs are harder than gold nibs, obviously. Gold nibs are naturally softer. So when you flex with a gold nib, you can, it depends. Sometimes you can get more, sometimes you can get less line variation. But with a steel nib, they are much harder and you do have to put a pressure on it. So that's actually a good kind of like warning I would give to someone. So when you start with the steel flex nib, and you probably will start with the steel flex nib, when you switch or upgrade yourself to gold ones, be careful and don't go mad and the same way that you do for a steel one, because you can push a steel one and you have to apply a lot more pressure. But with a gold one, you don't have to. And if you do, you're going to spring the tines. Thank you.
Have you noticed any significant difference between the Vogue Titanium and Palladium?
Yes, there's a huge difference, I would say. I think that the titanium one is harder. Palladium one was the one nib that really surprised me. I bought it because of the Visconti and I heard about it on the Visconti, but actually if you research online, Palladium nibs actually don't show any line variation, any photos that you won't see a huge amount of line variation. But it was when I actually watched one of Bernardo's videos on YouTube that I realized that, oh, this can actually do this. So I ended up playing with it a little bit more, went easy on it. As I said, I give myself my own advice. Don't stick to it all the time, but I do give myself my own advice. And yeah, I realized that mine actually could do quite a lot of line variation. And I didn't realize that Palladium nibs actually could do that. So with the titanium, I have two titaniums. One's actually a lot harder than the other. And I would say it's closer to steel, whereas Palladium, I would say it's softer than gold sometimes.
Okay, I'm getting one now.
Do get it.
You probably should rush and get one because they're not being made anymore. So
I'm actually ordering it right now.
Right. Mr. Dapperman, Greg, please ask your question.
As someone who actually did manage to spring a Scribo extra flexible nib when using it remarkably softly, there was no real pressure on it. Do you have any worries or get paranoid at all about similar, especially if you're titanium nibs, because titanium is a really bad metal for flexing, and when it springs, it will spring suddenly, and a lot of people have told me it's effectively it's non-recoverable, whereas at least with gold there's a chance of recovery, same Palladium, but titanium is an all or nothing. So do you ever get paranoid at all about it?
I did in the beginning, but I want to show you something. So with this Scribo, when you write with it, it's so soft, but actually just again, slowing down and concentrating, you can see how far it can go. So if I'll start really slowly and I'll take the flex a little bit. And I'll get to a point where I won't get any more. So you can see this is the point where it goes. And look, if I don't know how clear it is, but if I press too much, the feed actually makes a mark on the paper. I don't know if you can see that. It's not meant to do that. It's me pressing too hard, or my hand is actually too low on the paper. And that tells me usually that that's it. Like that's, but if you go slow, you won't get to that stage. I guarantee you.
Yeah. Well, that was the,
really slow.
thing with mine.
Yeah.
I was going slowly, and
Interesting.
The feed wasn't pressed. Even more embarrassingly, because I don't know if you've tried Lamy Gold nibs, the full size ones, not the 2K, but they actually flex a surprising amount.
Okay.
And I was actually just doing a comparison of my fine extra flexible Scribo nib, which effectively is an OMAS nib, against a fine Lamy Gold nib. And so I was just doing slow strokes down when the Scribo just went.
Yeah. I think
fixed and it was recovered. So
yeah.
It took a couple of attempts, and I've been told by John Sirocco, if it goes again, that's it, because he had to heat treat it with whatever way he did to get it working. It works beautifully now. But yeah.
I think there is always going to be that kind of little bit of worry that you are going to spring the times, but don't let that stop you from trying it. You might not like it. Like, don't worry, it's not for everyone. I get it. But yeah, I think you shouldn't be afraid of trying it.
I still do, and I've got some pilot FA nibs as well. Just my handwriting isn't up to it, as opposed to my nerves, really.
I mean, I think my handwriting got better as I used them. Yeah.
So I don't have a raise hand function, so I want to ask a question.
Sure.
And as you started the talk, you mentioned that there's a big difference between soft nibs and flex nibs. One thing that drives me crazy is see people going for the pilot and the platinum soft fine nibs or soft extra fine nibs, or the pilot falcon nib, which is in Japanese is the pilot elabo, and they go mad about it. Oh, that's a flex pen.
No,
I want to kill someone when I see that.
I'll show you. It doesn't do. It's not designed to do that much line variation. It's actually much harder nib than. So here you go. This is
They're
the
made
falcon
for Japanese
nib.
calligraphy.
Yeah. So you can get a little bit, but that's it.
Interrupting slightly, I used to study Japanese, and I was still learning Japanese and doing kanji, katakana, hiragana when I got my first platinum soft fine nib, and it really does suit that sort of writing. But as you say, it's a hard write. It's just a bounce back afterwards, which allows the sudden flick, emulating the flick of a brush.
Yeah.
The one on the left is the
pilot FA.
Tip,
I don't know if you know, but the FA is amazing. This not FA, the pilot falcon nib is amazing to swatch inks.
Okay.
Turn it around and write with the other side of the nib.
Okay. Oh wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Cool. That is really cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Learn something new every day.
True. Do you mind reading for us the winners?
Yes.
Apurva?
Yes, I've got your message. So 3 winners for today. And it's the green ink, so you better enjoy it. I love green inks. I actually resisted the urge to put everything green, so you should be proud of me for that. Okay, so the first winner is Paul Deuce. Second winner is Heather Parkinson. Third winner is Peter Walker.
I think you've just made my day.
I didn't. That was Bernardo.
Random number generator. Right, please send an email to the same email you sent with your address and with your address. And if you are not in the UK, please send me a mobile number because the post needed to be tracked. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Apurva, for this wonderful, wonderful talk. We all loved it.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Yeah.
I was really nervous in the beginning, but I got talking, so it was great.
That was amazing. It was really amazing.
Good. Glad you like it. I'll send my cheat sheet, and I'll send some
that on the
pictures.
group, please. And without further delay, we'll see you tomorrow in the same link from today. It's going to be the same link until Sunday. And so, 8:30, 8:45, that's it. We're going to be here. We're going to be talking. And thanks, everyone, for showing. Thanks, Apurva, for this amazing talk.
No problem.
Thanks, Apurva. It was great.
Thank you.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
guys. Mind yourselves. Be safe.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Apurva.
See ya. Thanks, Apurva.